Hello buyers and sellers. This video will go over the exclusive buyer representation agreement. And I say buyers and sellers because I want to make sure that both sides of the transaction understand what the buyer agency agreement is all about. There's obviously been some changes in the industry within the past year, and I don't know if there's misunderstanding or just not understanding in general how the system works, but this is going to explain it, so bear with me here. The buyer agency agreement is 4 pages long. There are different types of agency agreements. There's non-agency, where an agent can actually walk you through a property but not technically represent you. There is non-exclusive, and then there is exclusive agreements. And the agreement that I am talking about today is an exclusive agreement because the reality is us as agents, we work on commission, so we want to make sure that you are dedicated to us, and likewise we will be dedicated to you. It's a similar agreement when I have a listing. I have an exclusive right to sell agreement with my sellers. So getting into this, I'm going to go over the major paragraphs. The little ones are kind of self-explanatory, and of course if you're watching this video you should have a copy of it in front of you so you can read through on your own. But technically the agreement itself would be between you and my broker, Century 21. My managing broker is Nate, and he would be assigning me to you as your designated agent. So you would be communicating with me. The key to this exclusive is that, excuse me, I would be the only legal agent of you. So you're not working with any other agents. There is a slight exception to this because as we get a little further down on the paragraph here, it talks about the agreement is effective for the following areas. And so, Illinois is a big state. If you are open to moving anywhere in Illinois, or if you're looking in Wisconsin or Indiana, this will specify what area you're looking in. And so therefore, I cover like northeastern Illinois. If you're looking in central Illinois and I don't have access to that MLS and I don't really want to drive down that far anyways, then you could work with another agent on an exclusive, but it is best and most helpful if both agents understand that another person is involved and for which areas. Also, with regards to this exclusive, another important part is that it states that buyer understands that this agreement means that if the buyer acquires any property, whether through the buyer's own efforts, the designated managing broker and their agents, or another real estate agency besides this brokerage, or another third party, the buyer will be obligated to compensate Century 21 due to the terms of this agreement. So the bottom line is, if you are working with another agent and don't disclose it, you might be on the hook for 2 commissions, because the paragraph right below it, and I'm going to read this word for word, it says buyer represents that buyer has not entered into any other buyer representation agreement that is currently in effect, and is cautioned that entering into any exclusive buyer representation agreement during the term of this agreement may subject the buyer to liability to more than one brokerage. So again, that would be like a double commission. Nobody wants to pay that. Next paragraph goes into the effective area. So again, if you're looking in certain counties or whatnot, you can get really specific. Or nowadays, what I've seen with these buyer representation agreements, since everybody is a little gun shy, since they hadn't been used in Illinois before, if I am just meeting a new buyer for the first time, they don't know me, I don't know them, we don't really know if we want to work together yet or not, I just have them sign it, and I put the specific address of that one property in this agreement. And so that way, if they are going out and looking at another property, like if they aren't currently technically represented and wanted to shop around for agents, they could, if that is specific to one address. So, and then it kind of goes hand in hand with the term. When I do like the one address, then the term is very short term. It literally could be just one day, because there's also a protection period in here. Or it could be like for a month, like, okay, we're going to go see it one day. You're going to think on it, maybe go see some other properties. But if it comes back and the buyer wants to purchase the property specified, then I'm protected and I would be representing you as the buyer for that one property. The long term of this, though, is, ideally, obviously, we want to work with you from the beginning to the end. And so, understandably, when you're getting to know us, we're not going to ask you to sign something for a long term right away. That's why we do these one-day agreements. However, if we've taken you out a few times and you feel comfortable with us, we feel comfortable with you, then yes, we are going to ask you to sign an agreement for a longer term. And along with that would be compensation, which a little bit further in, and I will get to that in a minute. Next is stating that we all understand that we cannot discriminate, and as long as you are able, ready, and willing to purchase a property, we need to show it to you regardless of your race, age, color, sex, religion, etc. Next is, let's see, well, there's a couple other paragraphs in here. Agent duties. Obviously, we are going to be, searching the MLS for you, sending you listings. You let us know what ones you want to see. We will set up showings. Please give us as much notice as you can because our schedules can be crazy. And then the buyer duties. So we just ask that you get really specific in terms of what you are looking for so that we can narrow the field and yet also be somewhat broad. And I know that's kind of contradicting itself, but it's not just what you want, but it's why you want it. Because sometimes there's amenities to properties that, for example, somebody once told me a story that their client was looking for, acreage or they wanted to be on a lake. That's what it was. Turned out, fast forward, long story short, they ended up being on a golf course, and it was more so about just having wide open spaces behind them. They didn't want neighbors. So, it was more about what they wanted, but it wasn't what they wanted. It was why they wanted it. They wanted space. They wanted to be away from neighbors. That was repetitive. Sorry. Get off on a tangent there. Okay, then next regarding compensation. This is the best one. And this is why I'm doing this video. So this states that you're going to work with us and that you will pay us a fee. What it also states is that, and I'm going to read this one again. Buyer acknowledges that compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. If during the term of this agreement or protection period, buyer enters into a contract to acquire real estate and such contract results in a closed transaction, the buyer agrees to pay the brokerage a fee of X. And that is where you and your agent have that discussion prior to signing. It also states that, prior to showing any property, designated agent will use every reasonable effort to determine what, if any, compensation is being offered by the seller or the seller's brokerage and will disclose such as soon as practical. So if a seller is not outwardly offering compensation to the buyer broker, then it would need to the buyer needs to either be able to pay their agent like out of pocket, like have basically extra down payment, so to speak, or work it into their contract, which the contracts are now printed differently. So there is a paragraph for the compensation that way. But it also talks about how nowadays the MLS does not publish any type of compensation. And so it also states in here that the designated managing broker will make every effort to collect the compensation of the brokerage fee from the seller or the seller's brokerage. Any amount offered by the seller or seller's brokerage that does not satisfy the brokerage fee above will be negotiated between the buyer and the seller in the purchase agreement or paid by the buyer directly to to brokerage upon closing. So long story short, even though you and I may have an agreement for the buyer broker compensation here on the side, I say on the side, but it's like the way that is worded, it's almost like we are supposed to ask the seller to pay for the buyer broker fee. And as a primary listing agent, I can tell you my sellers are giving me a lot of pushback on not wanting to do that. And in the end of the day, for both parties, the buyer is only going to pay X amount in all. They only have so much funds, unless you're independently wealthy. But whether it gets paid from the buyer in terms of bringing more money to closing, or gets paid by the buyer through a higher offer to the seller so that the seller nets a bottom line that they are happy with, it's all one big lump. And I don't know how to describe that any differently or get people to see how that works, other than reiterating it time and time again. When I do go out on listing appointments, I continue to put a buyer broker fee in my net proceeds sheet so that I give my sellers what I call worst case scenario. And I tell them, be prepared to have to pay a buyer broker fee because they will ask for it. And many times the buyers don't have that extra cash to bring to the closing table for their closing costs. Now, obviously, we all need to do our due diligence ahead of time as we receive offers, but I hope this clarifies the difference between, the buyers paying versus the sellers. Of course, I welcome any phone calls, emails, questions about that. The other part to this that I wanted to cover is dual agency. And dual agency is where, for example, if I have a listing and I'm representing the seller and I get a lead from somebody who's not working with an agent, they like the property, they want to see it, they come see it, they want to make an offer, and either myself or one of my teammates writes an offer. That would be considered dual agency. And because I am a team, even though I primarily work with the sellers and my teammates primarily work with the buyers, because we are a team, the state of Illinois considers us one person, and therefore it's dual agency. Now, both parties, sellers and buyers, they can agree to allow that or not. So there are times, and the most question I get asked the most about dual agency is what's the downside to it? The answer to that is the negotiations. If you are not comfortable negotiating on your own behalf, then you should not allow us to be dual agents. That said, I know I've represented many people who are absolutely fine with negotiating for themselves. And of course, I can walk you through different scenarios and give you some, okay, well, not so much on dollars, not at all on dollars, but little things like if there's, say, some personal property that could be thrown in. I mean, I can advise on that. That's not a big deal. But point being, if you are comfortable negotiating on behalf of yourself, then please, we do ask that you allow us to be dual agents. I mean, after all, we do focus on this type of property and always want to, the dual agency transactions I've done in the past have always been great. And I feel kind of easier because, I know my seller's personality, my teammates know their buyer's personality, and yet I know the personality of my teammates. And it's just, to me, it's a little bit easier of a transaction. It gets a little bit more transparent. And on that note, it can't get too transparent because we absolutely need to keep each of our respective clients, their confidential information confidential. So if I am representing a seller and I ask my seller if I can disclose a certain bit of information that I believe is confidential, there's probably a reason behind it because I think it will help the sale. And so, but I ask that question to myself. I ask my sellers, I think, okay, well, if I weren't representing the sellers, would I know this bit of information? But I do know it, so can I disclose it? So I hope that makes sense. And then the other paragraphs are just very self-explanatory in terms of, yes, we represent sellers. We also represent other buyers. So there is a possibility that we actually might be showing a buyer, or like say, for example, two different buyers, the same property. And if two buyers want to make offers on the same property, that's called contemporaneous offers. And that is something that the buyer wouldn't, or excuse me, the buyer agent would need to disclose to both buyers at the time the second party would want to write an offer on the same property. Let's see. Oh, and then there's also previous representation. So there are times where, for example, if I had a listing previously that has expired, and if they went on to a different agent, then I may know some confidential information about that seller that I can't disclose, but just be aware that that information would be considered confidential. Minimum services talks about we do need to present all offers. Even if it's a lowball, legally obligated to present all offers up until the day of closing. We need to assist you in communicating and negotiating, and answer all your questions relating to offers and counter offers, and get you to the closing table. I mean, that minimum services is 3 bullet points, and it's ridiculous because what we do for you is actually a ton more. Let's see. And like I said, the rest, there's about half a dozen other smaller paragraphs that are quite self-explanatory. So I will let you read through those on your own, but I appreciate you listening to this video ahead of time. I think I hope it clarifies. And like I said, if it does not, please call, text, email with any questions prior to signing so that we can get that clarified up front. You're of a full understanding and that we're ready to roll. All right, thank you so much for listening, and hope to get some listings sent to you soon. Bye-bye.